The station with attitude. KCC Live.
Hi, you're listening to Amy on Out There on KCC Live. Welcome to our new show. Our topic today is going to be looking at sex and relationships, both in a normal hetero way and also in LGBT+. So stay tuned, more after this song.
This is KCC Live.
Hi, welcome back. You're listening to Amy on Out There. Our subject this week is sex and relationships. So we asked a few people what they thought safe sex was, and this is what they had to say.
Safe sex is more than just protection. So safe sex is obviously using condoms, making sure that you're safe, but it's also other things. It's having that conversation beforehand about when you were last tested, any treatments that you've had in the past, just knowing each other's status, really. It doesn't have to be a full...
I think safe sex is when you and your partner both respect each other's bodies and have clean, safe, consensual sex.
Health of both you and your partner. This could mean preventing sexually transmitted diseases with the use of condoms. Safe sex is also communicating with your partner and being sure that you're both ready.
Safe sex to me in its entirety is consensual and truthful. It's consensual in whether you use protection or not, what gets done, and respecting when withdrawal of consent has happened, and being truthful about your sexual history and health, and understanding that that person is going to be truthful for you consistently when anything changes.
Safe sex is sex where you protect yourself from contracting STIs or STDs, and also, if this is your intention, to prevent yourself from conceiving.
I think safe sex is sex with protection to protect against STIs, unwanted pregnancy.
You could say safe sex is in using protection, using a condom, but you could also say safe sex, you're having sex with someone you trust, you're having sex with someone you know isn't going to abuse their power in that situation. That's my take on it.
I think there's different answers to the question, what is safe sex? And there is the obvious kinds of instinct one where it comes down to protection and protecting yourself against disease or any unwanted pregnancy. But I think safe sex on a whole, on a bigger picture, is a bit more about just protection, as in physical protection, and more about emotional and mental protection. So understand the difference between love and sex being a physical release and something you might want to do just because you want to have sex, and love and being with someone and the act of sex because you want to have sex with that person and you love that person. I think younger, I don't remember much of the sex ed in school, to be honest. I don't think I paid attention, probably because I just couldn't relate to it at that age. I was a bit like, I don't know what you're talking about, and it's not something that I want to, particularly pay attention to. And I think that you pick up more things as you get older, just from friends and magazines and things. Obviously, the internet a bit more now, but I don't think anyone ever prepares you or teaches you about relationships and self-esteem and how a physical act, so doing something with someone, how that can impact your well-being emotionally, mentally, physically, however way you want to look at it. And understanding that just because someone has sex with you doesn't mean that they love you. Just because you are entertaining someone or you're doing something, it doesn't necessarily mean it will result or end in the way you want it to. And I think young girls, I think now nobody really prepares young people or young females more so for the emotional side of sex and the emotional side of relationships and how other people's behaviours and other people's thoughts and other people's actions can impact your well-being. So to the question about safe sex, I think, yes, there's the protection side of things and there's the education side of things, but separate from that, there is the emotional and mental well-being of sex and understanding what exactly it is.
This is KCC Live.
Hi, welcome back. You're listening to Amy on Out There on KCC Live. So we're talking about types of relationships first, and we're just going to have a little look at this. So people think of relationships, you think of like usually a sort of hetero boyfriend, girlfriend sort of situation, man, wife, anything like that. But The truth is, relationships come in all shapes and sizes. It's not just your typical sort of two people that you think about. You can have relationships with your family, with your friends. It doesn't always have to be that includes all those things, you know, the intimacy, things like that. It doesn't have to include sex either for relationships. You also get different types of relationships. You get, you know, males together, gay males. You get lesbian females. You get bisexual people together. They may be with both female or male. You can have polyamorous relationships where one person or more people will have relationships with more than one person, and that's their dynamic, and there's lots of different ways that can work for them. You can have people in non-binary relationships as well, where they don't really identify as any gender, so you can't say it's male, male, female, 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 male, whatever. They're just non-binary. It doesn't matter. You also get people who are in open relationships where their relationship isn't constricted by what people think of as normal monogamy. Normal, I hate that word, normal, but it is what everyone thinks of as like a typical relationship usually. So an open relationship, you may be in a relationship with that person, but you may also be allowed to go and, you know, have sexual relationships with somebody else as well with the consent of that person. It could be that they want to know or they don't want to know. Let's just draw the line now. If you're doing something that a partner doesn't know about and you don't feel comfortable that you could tell them, that's cheating. That's not an open relationship. You have to previously agree to it for it to be an open relationship. Sorry, people. That one doesn't cut it. Anyway, after this, we're going to start by looking at sex properly, which I know is quite a taboo topic for some people. So we're going to be scientific about it, and we're going to talk about it, because I definitely think it's something that people need to talk about more often. More after this.
This is KCC Live.
Hi guys, my name is John Bird and I am from Liverpool Pride, and I want to just say a big thank you to KCC Live for inviting me to get involved with this show. It's nice to have an outlet for LGBT plus and the wider communities to have an outlet to discuss and converse and put points and facts and essentially opinion pieces about various things that affect our community, and it's nice to be getting part of that. A little bit about me. Again, my name is John Bird. I am the marketing and communications lead for Liverpool Pride, which means anything you see on social media or in the press or anything that outwardly you see about Liverpool Pride on anything, pretty much, I am the lead on. So recently we launched All Together Now as the theme for Liverpool Pride 2018, which has gone down really well. You have no idea how much stress and anxiety that press release put on me, because the first thing I do is look through all the interactions and engagement we get from that and to see what people's opinions are. And I can't help but take these things personally because it's essentially my baby. But this show today is about sex and relationships, and it's an interesting topic for the LGBT plus community, isn't it, really? Because there is an opinion and a stereotype for everything with our community. I don't know why that is, but it is. Especially within the gay male community, there's a certain stigma attached to relationships. People feel like no one can stay. People feel like no one can stay in a monogamous relationship, but that is the beauty of the LGBTQ plus world, is that it can be what you want to make it, whether that's monogamy, polygamy, open relationships, closed relationships. That's the beauty of our community, is that we try to be as accepting in anything like that, and it's an interesting conversation to have. Especially if you go right into the core and just go straight in about sex, you know, the ins and outs. I made the joke, I didn't even mean to say that. That's a different conversation altogether. Sex, go straight to the core. Like, sex education, as far as I'm concerned, is non-existent. I mean, it wasn't when I was in school, which is, we're talking 10 years plus. I think the closest thing I had to sex education was that scene in Grease 2 where they sing a song about plants. And as a side note, I've ever seen Grease 2 once, so that's my opinion on Grease 2. But that's a very, very poignant point, I think. The fact that there is a very, very lacking sex education, and that's just for societal norm heterosexual sex. The conversation seems to be more about biology and reproduction, which obviously is always an argument against the LGBT community anyway. But to then not have it for that is obviously a proxy to not having it for the LGBT community, because it opens up a wide array of questions. For example, gay men sadly have the stereotype of being promiscuous. I mean, it's evident in all walks of life that people are promiscuous. That was a weird blanket statement. I didn't mean that. What I mean was, it can happen with anyone. Women can be promiscuous, men can be promiscuous. That's whether you're gay or straight. Because let's be honest, sex is a human urge. Everyone enjoys it. It's fun. It's a bit messy, but at the end of the day, it fulfills an urge that we as humans do. That's just what it is. But when you're talking about it in the realms of education, because let's not forget, whilst it is fun and great and all that jazz, it does come with I was going to say side effects, but that's not what I mean. You've just got to be careful. There's so many STIs, STDs. I never know which one to say if it's the same thing, because it's not. That you need to be very aware of who you're sleeping with, and just be conscious of protecting yourself, and that's whether you're a male and you're wearing a condom, whether you're a female and you're wearing a femdom. Is that the right word? I wouldn't know, never been there. As well as the various form of education that people can take, which moves nicely in to the idea of PEP and PrEP. So if you don't know what PEP and PrEP are, I'm pretty sure it's probably been mentioned earlier in the show or later in the show. So PEP is post-exposure prophylaxis and PrEP is pre-exposure prophylaxis. Ideally, these are pills that gay men can take. PrEP is something that you would take, I think it's daily. I'm pretty sure it's daily. PrEP is what you can take every day, and the idea is it does things to your body where you basically cannot try and contract the HIV virus. And PEP is something that you take within the first 72 hours of potential exposure to the HIV virus, whether you've had unprotected sex with a person who then discloses that they're HIV positive, and they don't know their count, or you've fell and in the worst case scenario landed on a needle or something like that. Varying ways of it. And PEP you are meant to take within the first 72 hours, and essentially the argument is that should get rid of any potential likelihood of you transmitting HIV. Obviously it does work, but if you are having to take PEP, you must definitely still go and get routinely checked the following I want to say it's 4 weeks, then 8 weeks, and then 6 months again. There's a window, basically. The HIV virus doesn't turn up on blood tests straight away. So yeah, you should still do that. But unfortunately, the idea with PEP and PrEP is people are starting to see it as, for PEP, a morning after pill. So they can, with gay men, the stereotype is people can be promiscuous, go and have as much sex as they like, and it's fine, unprotected sex, that is. And then it's fine because they can just go to A&E, because you can get PEP in A&E, but the NHS, you just go in and say, I need access to PEP, and you get seen straight away. And PrEP, they see as what would commonly known as the pill, which stops females from getting pregnant. In that idea is, I'm on PrEP, so I won't transmit HIV. And it's like, well, dude, did you like that very localism there? Dude, just because you're on PEP or PrEP doesn't mean that you can't transmit, I keep saying transmit, and that's totally the wrong word, doesn't mean you can't contract any other STIs. There's chlamydia, there's gonorrhea, did you know there's been a rise, I found out last year, I think? Yeah. There's been a rise in reported cases of hepatitis A. And I think it's A because there's an A, there's a B, there's a C. There's too many. Why can't they just give them different names? Different strands of the hepatitis virus, basically. And there's been a rise of cases in gay men. So they started doing inoculations for it. And yeah, again, that's something that PEP or PrEP will not protect you against. So people need to be still cautious and educated. And that's where the problems lie with the education system, where these conversations aren't had. which I find really bizarre, personally, because obviously, one, you should have sex education anyway for heterosexual people anyway, well, everyone, of course, heterosexual people, to stop any unwanted pregnancies happening, because if people feign ignorance that they didn't know that sex led to baby making, then what is the world we live in? But also, the health side of it. There's dangers. There's stuff you can contract, and it's life-threatening. Like, now HIV is a livable disease, but obviously we talk about the AIDS pandemic in the 1980s, and people died. And that's how serious it is, and that just came from sex. It's interesting, isn't it? But then it goes into more questions, because then I'm not a transgender person, and I don't speak for transgender people, but it does raise questions about how do you have... Well, not how do you... I think everyone should have it anyway, because that is the overly cautious thing that society has right now, is how do you have the conversation about sex education for trans people, because it's a completely different ballgame again. So, in terms of the core education system, I do think it needs to be addressed. But moving swiftly on from sex education, I want to talk more about relationships again. So the LGBT community has this very strange, bizarre notion that, especially gay men, that monogamous relationships don't work, don't last. I mean, I completely disagree. I'm a person who believes in monogamy, but I am quite open-minded to people who aren't of that same wavelength, because, you know, it's your relationship. You do what you want to do with it, as long as you're open and honest with your partner, or partners, as it may be. I find it a very interesting piece, the fact that people automatically think that if you're gay, you can't be in a loving relationship. Contrary to the belief, I know older gay men who've been in relationships for years, they've got kids, and other than the fact that they are two men, which is all that people seem to want to see, is that they are a very normal couple and family. It is what it is. And then you talk about lesbians, and people think, oh yeah, it's I know, because it's two women. They want to be like that. And I'm like, oh dude, I know lesbians who are as bad promiscuously, I can never say that word properly, as some gay men are. And it's an interesting conversation to have when it comes to sex and it comes to relationships, because people have this black and white view, and that is not the world we live in today. And that's the beauty of the LGBT community. So, I mean, personally, like relationships, you talk about like marriage. So the argument all the time with gay marriage was it's marriages between a man and a woman, and that is a religious thing, and that's a completely different conversation which I don't want to go into. But I find it really interesting that when you look at history, homosexuality was partially decriminalised in the UK, so it was just England and Wales, in 1967. But we didn't get equal marriage till July 2013. It didn't come into force until March 2014, but it did pass Parliament in July 2013. And if you think of it, I mean, I'm not the best person when it comes to maths, so I'm not even going to try and work out that time and that time scale. But I think that's very interesting. I mean, don't get me wrong, I know we had civil partnerships before then, and I'm not even... This is how great on the research I am. But I don't understand why there was ever a difference. Civil partnerships aren't the same as marriage. And that was always the argument. So why do gay couples need marriage? Because they've already got a civil partnership. It's like, well, the rights aren't the same. And then we go into this whole massive legal discussion. And yeah, it's very, very interesting, that conversation. But I also find it very interesting how, though we are a United Kingdom, supposedly, Scotland didn't pass... I mean, it was the same time span, but Scottish Parliament passed same-sex marriage in February 2014. So essentially, they passed it, 9 months later, and then it came into effect in December 2014. So which I find really bizarre, because even though when you look at history in, like, say, Section 28, which came into place in 1988, it was repealed in England, in 2003. It was actually repealed in Scotland in 2001. So I find the differences in how England and Scotland vary on their stances very interesting. But Section 28 has a very interesting point to it. So Section 28, if you don't know what it is, I might be going off on a little tangent that's not quite sex and relationships, but there is a point. I will get there. Section 28 was a clause in the Local Government Act that prohibited local authorities from promoting, and that's the P word that I despise in this context, homosexual relationships as normal family relationships. Again, the word normal. Let's not even go into it. And one of the main factors, and again, it's one of those weird things that's highlighted, and it probably wasn't the basis of why it went into place, but because there was a media hype around it, it's classed as one of these leading factors. There was a book being used to teach primary school children in a London school that was a Labour-based local authority. Bearing in mind, we're talking Tory government. It was during Margaret Thatcher's era. There was a book being used called Jenny Lives with Eric and Malcolm Martin. I did a video about it and I kept getting those names wrong. But basically it was a book, a very simple book full of like photographs, stage photographs of a family going about their daily lives, but the parents were two men. And there was outrage for it because there was an image of little Jenny, who looks about 6, having breakfast in bed with her two dads. And immediately we go down this route of paedophilia. Like what is a little girl doing in bed with two men? But if it was a man and a woman in the story, then that wouldn't have raised any eyebrows. And that's an education point. So it's very interesting how in the 1980s there was a book being used to discuss homosexual relationships, and then it caused an uproar to stop propaganda, as we'll call it, to that kind of thing. And but it was showing the normalities of a same-sex relationship, and that caused an uproar on why we needed to stop it. Oh my God, two men raising a child. And that potentially led to Section 28, which is one of the most horrific clauses, anti-LGBT clauses in modern English history. Again, my name is John Bird. If you want to see anything to do with Liverpool Pride, you can head to liverpoolpride.co.uk. We have a brand new spanking website, which yours truly designed. I love to blow my own trumpet, clearly. And I have my own blog, which you can find at thegreenbirdtoldme.com. I've recently been uploading my own podcast. I have like a little backlog, about 24 episodes of podcasts that I used to do. And I'm just in the process of uploading them. So they're all LGBT based as well. You might see some snippets of it on this show. Who knows? And yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. Troll.
This is KCC Live.
Hi, welcome back. You're listening to Amy on Out There on KCC Live. So, talking about sex, some really good point of view there from John Bird. Thank you so much for talking to us, John. People can get a little bit like touchy about talking about sex, and I am one of them people that will happily openly discuss it, but I think we need more of that. We need to be more open about it. There's a huge taboo about people having sex and having sex outside of relationships or marriages and things like that. And at the end of the day, the way I see it is that whatever you're doing, whatever you choose to do, that's okay, as long as you're being safe and you're consenting. And that's like the buzzword, consent. We've done a show on this previously, which you can check out on kcclive.com, and you can click on The Good Place and you'll find us there, out there. Or you can have a little nosy over on YouTube and find KCC Live and search for Out There. Or you can add us on Facebook if you just search for Out There. The picture's lovely and rainbowy and stuff. But the big thing seems to be that everyone thinks it's really taboo to go and have a one-night stand, that you're somehow dirty or, you know, you're less of a person or whatever. And you're not. At the end of the day, human beings enjoy sex. And it should be something that we consent for, we're ready for, and we're happy to do. And you know what? If there's any sort of doubt, then it means no. And that should be respected. You know, it's okay to say no. Don't ever feel pressured that you've got to go along with someone just because they want to, but you don't. Young people, I think there's an awful lot of peer pressure, and I found a little bit on the NHS website, NHS Choices it is, on peer pressure. So this is what they had to say. Sometimes it feels like everyone's trying to push you into having sex, your friends, your boyfriend or girlfriend, films and TV. But it's up to you when you have sex, and it's okay to say no. Find out how to resist the pressure. 1 minute you're playing kiss chase in the playground and sex doesn't come into it. The next minute your friends are obsessed about when everyone will lose their virginity. You might be thinking about sex, but the reality of it can be confusing. It takes time to understand what sex is all about. Just because you want to know more doesn't mean you have to rush into anything. If you're feeling pressured into having sex, you're not alone. You might feel like the only virgin, but the average teenager starts to have sex in the UK around 16. This is true for boys and girls, so not everyone who says they've had sex is telling the truth. Good relationships start with friendship and trust builds from there. Now, I definitely agree with that, because, do you know what? Take it from a person that's rolled in the hay a few times. Sorry, Mum. But, do you know what, right? People put so much pressure on losing their virginity. And I can honestly say that I've not personally spoken to a person that's gone, when I lost my virginity, it was amazing, it was the best thing in the world. I've not. And people think it's this huge, huge thing, and I promise you, it's not. And do you know what? Prove me wrong, by all means. If someone's had the best experience of their life when they've lost their virginity, you can email me and tell me about it, Amy at KCC Live. Go for it. Just don't go into too much detail. I can be a bit prudish on occasion. Honest. But the thing is, we're sort of brought into a society that seems to value virginity and losing it so much. And then it doesn't stop from there. So as a young teenager, people are feeling pressure to lose their virginity and have sex and be sexually active. And then it doesn't stop from there. Like, I was talking to my partner about this, and he went to university. I didn't go to university. I've not been there yet. I will, but I haven't been there yet. And he was saying, like, on Freshers Week, he was like, the flat upstairs had an A to Z list because they wanted to sleep with everyone from each letter. So, you know, they wanted, if it was a male and they wanted females, they wanted a Annie, a Betty, a Claire, you know, like that. Like, it's a really relaxed attitude, but it's also a bit wrong, that whole sort of, it's like that frat house thing. It's not good. You should value the person that you're sleeping with. They shouldn't just be another name, you know. I mean, that's okay if that's what you want and that's what the other person consents to. But really, you should be making a proper connection with the people that you want to sleep with, especially at a young age. But it really isn't something that we should feel pressured into doing, especially not at a young age. The NSPCC released a statement, and this is from February 2015, so it's a little old now, but I think it still stands. It's 40% of teenage girls pressured into having sex. Physical violence and abuse also factor in 20% of relationships, new research finds. It says the more than 4 in 10 teenage schoolgirls in England have experienced sexual coercion. Most were pressured to have sex or other sexual activity, and some cases included rape. Controlling online behaviour by partners through constant checking of their social network activity, sending threatening messages or telling them who they could be friends with was closely associated with young people experience violence or abuse from their partner offline. We live in a generation now and a day and an age where we use social media for everything and the internet for everything. You want your groceries delivered? Internet. You want to pay your bills? Internet. You want to meet your mates? Internet. You want to go on games? Internet. Honestly, it's amazing. It's so good, but at the same time, it does have a cost. You know, it's not just all good. And there's definitely a pressure there for people. And things like sending pictures and stuff like that. So, you know, you get a lot of people where it's like, oh, DM me a pic. And then, you know, they're trying to get pictures of people, personal pictures. And then you hear about things like revenge porn, where people post up pictures after the fact. Or, you know, they post them up for everyone to see. Or catfishing as well. I was telling somebody I've met recently that I was a victim of like a catfishing thing. And what it was somebody had taken my pictures, all my sort of MySpace era selfies, and were using them on another site. And we're talking to young girls, saying like I was after young girls sort of thing. And these girls were responding because why wouldn't they? So I think we definitely need to be more careful about that. And it's something that we need to bring into education in schools. So sex education is now compulsory in schools. But I think the issue is it's such a sort of, it's a bit of a grey area. Because the only guidelines basically are it's got to be age appropriate. And we should talk about healthy relationships and safety. And you can talk about sex and stuff, usually the biology, but your parents can take you out of it if they so wish, so you could not learn anything. And it could be that they really do just teach the basics, and I think we need to teach about healthy relationships as well. That's really, really important. In the same NHS article that I was saying about, not NHS, sorry, the NSPCC one, they also say that pornography influences teens' attitude to sex and relationships. The researchers found that a high proportion of teenage boys regularly view pornography, and 1 in 5 harboured extremely negative attitudes towards women. Almost 4 in 10, so 39% of boys in England aged 14 to 17, admitted they regularly watch porn, and around 1/5 strongly agreed with statements such as, "It's sometimes acceptable for a man to hit a woman if she's been unfaithful." Women lead men on sexually and then complain about the attention they get. Like, things like that are unreal. We've just covered this in our Man Show, which will be up for podcast that you can also listen to. We give men and boys this standard that this is the way it's okay to treat people, and it's not. We should be valuing each other, regardless of sex or gender. We should be. It's never acceptable for anybody to hit anybody. I don't believe that a man should ever hit a woman, and I don't believe a woman should ever hit a man either. Full stop. Regardless of gender, it's never acceptable. I don't care if you've been unfaithful. If someone's been unfaithful, do whatever you want to do. Cut them out your life. Get rid of them. Don't hit them. That doesn't get any results. So another one was women lead men on sexually and then complain about the attention they get. Again, this comes into the sort of rape culture that we have, where it's like, oh, she was wearing a short skirt, she was asking for it. And I think there is male equivalence to that as well, but I think it's more predominantly a female thing. And it's wrong. And we definitely need to be teaching our children and the younger generations that this is not right. It's like, you keep your hands to yourself unless someone gives you the consent to touch them. It's kind of black and white. It's not hard. But we're all too sort of prudish to talk about these sort of subjects. So let's talk about porn, right? The porn that most people watch isn't real. It's not realistic. I can honestly say that I have never had someone come to fix me sink and they're dressed in like the littlest sort of skimpy clothes ever, and they never use the ratchet, put it that way, right? The fella comes and he's in his overalls, he fixes me sink and he goes home. But it's not just that, like, they expect certain they create expectations for certain body standards. So, your woman should be well kept, she should be well groomed, she should be small, thin, whatever, in general mainstream porn. Obviously there is other porn that goes off that. It's not real, but it sets unreal standards. Something that I've come across, in girly talk and stuff as well, that men, just because I know the female sides of it, and again, I'm assuming that this also works for all sorts of sexes and communities, that men will expect more from them because of porn. So there's things that they don't want to do that will be expected. So, a bit of food for thought there. But also, talking of porn, 50 Shades of Grey. I've covered this one before in the Consent Show. Again, go check that one out because the podcasts are awesome, if I do say so myself. But 50 Shades of Grey is another unrealistic sort of relationship. It gives this it paints this idea that abuse is romantic. And I'm not saying that all BDSM is abuse. Completely contrary to that. I don't believe that 50 Shades of Grey is actually good BDSM at all. It's not. And the point of the story is that if it was a lorry driver, for example, that was doing these things, that was Mr. Grey, and he didn't have loads of money, would it be the same story? And I think the answer is no, it really wouldn't be. Do you know what I mean? If it was Barry the lorry driver, there would be no Mr. Grey. Barry the lorry driver would be locked up for stalking and abuse. So again, a bit more food for thought. So more after this, we're going to talk a little bit about STIs next. Stay tuned.
The Station with Attitude, KCC Live.
Hi, welcome back. You're listening to Amy on Out There. Our subject today is sex and relationships, and we're talking about the sexy side of things. So one thing that is not particularly sexy is STIs and STDs. The difference between an STI and an STD is literally it's infection and disease. That's it. So these things can happen when, you have sexual contact with another person. There's different things that you can use to sort of ward against them, if you like, and decrease your chances, but ultimately there's nothing that's 100% foolproof. I'm also going to cover things here that will stop pregnancy. I know that they're not in the same category, but it's all protection. So you've got things like barrier methods, things like condoms, femidoms, things like that, dental dams. Dental dams are good as well with female-female relationships too, because you should still be covering yourself there. There are various STIs and Ds you can pass on, even if it's female-female or male-male. Lubricant helps with condoms because if they're dry, there's more of a chance that they're going to rip and tear. You can get the pill. You can be on the pill if you don't want any babies, but that will not protect you against STIs or Ds, so don't expect it to. You can get implants, which is like a little matchstick that they put under your arm. A little bit too much information, but that's what I have, and it works for me. I'd recommend it. It doesn't work for some other women. Some other women have bad side effects, but it's good. I don't have to worry about it for 3 years, and then I just go and get it changed. Great. You can get the coil as well fitted, and you can have a diaphragm that you can use. You can also get emergency contraception too, which is the morning after pill. That's not advised as a form of contraception, however, that's more of an emergency measure. You can also get PEP, which Richie is going to cover for us shortly, which is basically, again, it's a bit like a morning after pill, but again, don't be relying on it, and that's for if you feel like you've been exposed to HIV. So, there you go. There's a nice big long list of things to help you keep safe and not end up catching any STIs or STDs. Of course, they're not the end of the world, don't get me wrong, right? Some of them can be serious and you should get them treated, but there is a big stigma behind it which stops people from talking about it, and we really, really shouldn't stop talking about it. There's a really high case, I've got data here from 2015, and they're saying the total number of new STI diagnoses in England was 434,456, but that was actually a decrease from the year before of 3.4%. So people are going and they're getting checked out. There's plenty of places around Liverpool. I know for a fact there is because I've been and used a couple of them. You've got the one in town, which is like a gum clinic, and you've got various ones in Knowsley as well. You can log on and check them out. If you go onto the NHS website, they'll give you your closest one and you just type it in. There's also the Brook for people who are under 25. Their website is amazing, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more later, but you can still check that out at brook.org. So Dean is going to give us a little bit of information about STIs. This is what he'd found out and he has to say.
This is KCC Live.
Hi, I'm Dean, and today I'm going to be talking to you about STIs. There are many different STIs and names for them that you might have heard of, including the clap, high five, the drip, the dose. I could go on. So even though their names might be a little bit funny, the problems caused by STIs are not cute or fun. They can cause severe pain and discomfort, making you unable to do everyday activities and even leading to death. Cases of STIs in the UK are still rising, meaning it's more important than ever before to use protection. There seems to be a common misconception that protection is only used to prevent pregnancy in straight couples, but it's used for so much more than that, as it can also prevent some of the infections and diseases that I'm going to talk to you about now. Whether you're in a heterosexual or same-sex relationship, it's still important to use protection to avoid contracting any of the STIs that I'm going to talk to you about. Some are more serious than others, as most can be treated with antibiotics. One of the ones that can be treated with antibiotics is chlamydia, which is the most common STD in the UK at the moment. And although the effects aren't as severe, it's still important to be treated at a sexual health clinic, as, like I said, this can be actually cured relatively easily with medication. If it is left untreated, though, it can cause women to be unable to conceive, so it's still a really horrible infection to have. Just because it's not as serious as some others does not make it risk-free, but if you do get help quickly, then it will not cause any damage. Some other diseases are a lot more severe, though, such as gonorrhea. The statistics show that currently a quite new and extremely dangerous strain of gonorrhea is on the rise. There is resistance to antibiotics, meaning it's extremely difficult to treat, especially if it's left untreated for a long period of time. Even without noticeable symptoms, gonorrhea can cause serious complications. Those include pelvic inflammatory disease, which may cause pain, fever, ectopic pregnancy, and infertility. Anyone who has unprotected sex is at risk of gonorrhea, And I think it's important to remember personally that like the majority of STIs are not gender or sexuality specific. Anyone can be affected, so don't think that it won't happen to you or, you know, I'll be all right, because you do need to be careful. And even though it might sound like a cliche, stay safe, because that's just so important. Another STI that is talked about a lot is genital herpes, which there is currently no cure for, but symptoms can often clear up by themselves. However, as I mentioned before, there's no guarantee of anything until you actually go to a sexual health clinic. That way you can be prescribed medicine to ease the pain of the infection. And I think that's also why it's so important to get checked out regularly. And if you do see any kinds of symptoms at all, however small they may be, the NHS recommend that you get checked out at a local sexual health clinic, which you can find online. Obviously, we can't go into all of the symptoms on here, as there are so many for every different STI, and obviously every case is different. But there is a full list of symptoms online, particularly on the NHS website, and also advice on where to go and what to do if you think that you may have an infection.
The Station with Attitude, KCC Live.
Hi, welcome back. You're listening to Amy on Out There on KCC Live. Thank you so much, Dean, for that information. That was really interesting. So I want to talk a little bit about the Brooch, as I said I would. The Brooch started in 1964. It's been around that long. It was started by a lady called Helen Brooch, and she created a pioneering health service for young women who couldn't access contraception anywhere else and desperately needed support. She refused to let stigma and what was accepted stand in the way of what was needed for these young women, despite fierce opposition. 50 years later, and Brooch's still here for every young person that needs us. That's 50 years of support, educating and empowering young people to make their own choices about their sexual health and well-being. The Brooch are a fantastic service, and they do all over the UK. As a teenager, I used the Brooch for contraceptive, and you know what? I never had an issue with them. It was really easy. They gave me really good advice. I was lucky that I was given stellar advice on how to stay safe and stuff, because even like my parents' generation, they don't really talk about it. I got the birds and the bees talk, but not a whole lot, really, just the real basics, like nothing about relationships and stuff other than it should be someone you love. And let's be honest, when people lose their virginity, it's very rarely someone they love. They may think they love them at the time, but it's not all about love. Some people just enjoy sex. It doesn't have to be linked with love, and that's okay, as long as you're being safe about it and you're being respected. That's all right, you know. Anyway, moving on. The Brooch offer various treatments as well and tests. Another good one to have a look at is the Terence Higgins Trust, and they focus especially on HIV. So on their website it says their mission is to end the transmission of HIV in the UK, to empower and support people living with HIV lead healthy lives, to amplify the voices of those affected by HIV across public and political arenas, to eradicate the stigma and discrimination, and to enable people to enjoy good sexual health. And again, I couldn't agree more. The Terence Higgins Trust will do a thing where they'll send you out a test kit. They do drives with it, so you may find that there are times when they won't and there are times when they will, but they do so much work for people who have HIV and are HIV positive. Again, really great. I mean, if you look at the history of HIV was originally marketed as the gay disease. There were high levels of gay men with HIV, and one of the reasons is the way it's transmitted. So HIV is transmitted through certain body fluids getting into your body, your bloodstream. So it was common in gay men because they were having anal sex unprotected, and it's something that it can cause tears. So if one person's got it, it's easier to pass it on. It's not the only way that you can pass it on. Hetero people pass it on. Mums can pass it to babies. It can also be shared through sharing drugs as well. So needles, syringes, things like that. The chance of getting HIV through oral sex is really low as well. It can be dependent on a lot of things. So depending on if you give, you receive, the oral hygiene of the person giving it as well. You know, if you've got bleeding gums and things, that can be a no-no, which is why things like dental dams for giving oral sex is good, and condoms. HIV is no longer the death sentence that it was thought of being. It's really not. We've got things like PrEP and PEP, which Richie's going to tell us about in a moment. It is no longer, I don't think it is the gay disease. I think The good thing about the media painting it that way was lots of men went and got tested, and the numbers are steadily decreasing now. Each year there's less and less new diagnosed cases, there's a lot more awareness, and there's a lot more treatment out there. So it's not what people think it used to be, and we do definitely need to remove that stigma as well. If someone's living with HIV, it doesn't mean that they can't live a perfectly normal life. It's just they've got to be more careful about a few things, that's it. So this is what Richie's got to say about PrEP and PEP. Stay tuned, more after this.
The Station with Attitude, KCC Live.
Hi, it's Richie. I'm here to talk a little bit about PrEP and PEP because I've been doing a bit of research and I've got a little bit of experience about these two drugs. The easiest way for me to explain off the bat is, because you might not have heard of these two drugs. So you've got PrEP and PEP. So the easiest way that I use to explain the differences between PrEP and PEP is not how a lot of campaigners like it to be explained, because it can seem to trivialise it. But as someone who doesn't know about the differences, I believe this is the easiest way to explain the two differences. PEP, think of as the morning after pill, and PrEP is like the pill, because PrEP is designed to prevent the transmission of HIV, which you take before you can become exposed to it, and PEP is something that you take within 72 hours of when you've believed to have been exposed to it. But you don't need to take PEP if you've already been taking PrEP. So I'm not the best. That's not the easiest way to explain it. But after doing a little bit of research, there is a fantastic website called iwantprepnow.co.uk, and the co-founder, Greg Owen, explains it perfectly. So here's Greg Owen explaining a little bit about PrEP and PEP.
What is PrEP? PrEP is a pill you can take to protect you from HIV. PrEP stands for pre-exposure prophylaxis. But what does that actually mean? Pre is something you do before, exposure in this case to HIV, and prophylaxis is a treatment or action you can take to help prevent disease. PrEP is different from PEP. PEP stands for post-exposure prophylaxis, a treatment you can take after sex to help prevent HIV infection if you think you've been exposed. It's a month of treatment, and it's really important that you start within 72 hours of possible risk of exposure. Ideally, we'd like you to start within 24 hours. And in the UK, PEP is available from a sexual health clinic or a local A&E department, so you can still access it at weekends and holidays. Back to PrEP. The only drug currently approved for use as PrEP is branded drug Truvada, or its generic equivalent. The single pill contains two active drugs, tenofovir TDF and emtricitabine FTC. PrEP is extremely effective at reducing your risk of contracting HIV if taken correctly. Remember, PrEP only protects you from HIV. You'll still need to take other precautions to reduce your risk of contracting all other STIs, including gonorrhea, chlamydia, syphilis, and hepatitis C. It's a really good idea to ask about vaccinations as well. Ask about hepatitis A, hepatitis B, and a HPV vaccine. HPV is the virus that can cause some cancers in your throat and your lower parts. That is PrEP.
That was Greg Owen, the co-founder of iwantprepnow.co.uk, talking about the differences between PrEP and PEP. As he did say, PEP is available from sexual health clinics and also from A&E. A lot of A&E departments, so they won't necessarily know straight. If you just go in and go, I need PEP, they'll probably be like, what's that? So if you do encounter that whenever you go to A&E, always ask for the HIV doctor or clinician who is on duty, because they always have somebody who is trained in HIV and things like that on duty in any hospital. It should be taken within 72 hours, ideally within 24 hours of when you believe you've been exposed to a potential risk. It's 2 tablets. You take 2 in one go, then 12 hours later you take another one, and they have to be taken at the same time each day for 1 month. But PEP is an emergency measure and should only be used as a last resort. For example, if a condom breaks or you have a slip-up in your usual sexual health routine, it shouldn't be used as a, oh, I don't need to use condoms because I can get PrEP. But it is available free of charge and be prescribed by doctors if you meet certain criteria. If you're unsure whether you meet that criteria and you have taken a risk, or you feel as though you've been exposed to a potential risk, if you go to the Terence Higgins Trust website at tht.org.uk, and they have a quick survey that you fill in, answer a couple of questions. You don't have to put any details in, it's just tick boxing, and it tells you if they believe if you should go and seek out getting PrEP or not. It's got a high success rate. It's not 100%, as nothing is. Even with PrEP is not 100% effective. It's 92 to 99% effective, but you have to take it rigorously every day. Although there are different ways you can take PrEP. PrEP can be taken daily, which keeps your levels of protection up. It can also be taken for periods. So say, for example, if you know you might be taking a risk over the weekend, you can take it 2 hours before the risk and then for 2 days after. And you can also do it for holiday. If you're just going away on holiday and you believe you may be exposed, you can take it then as well. There are on the website, and if you do sign up to the trial or anything like that, they do give you advice on how to take PrEP effectively. As I say, PrEP is available on the NHS. It's available for anybody who meet criteria in Scotland and in Wales. But if you live in England, it's not freely available, but it is available for 10,000 people as part of a PrEP impact trial for over 3 years. It's available to approximately 200 level-3 gum clinics in England. So the nearest level-3 gum clinic for Knowsley is in the Royal Liverpool Hospital. If you go to the sexual health clinic in Huyton or anywhere around Knowsley, then they won't be able to give you PrEP. It does have to be done through the hospital. And just walk in. It's a drop-in service. And they're dead understanding. They're really friendly. They're non-judgmental as well, which is really good. You can just talk about how you feel you've heard about the trial and you feel as though you meet the criteria. There's some questions that they'll ask about your sexual past. They'll do a on-the-spot HIV test, and they'll also do one where they send it away. You get a week's worth of tablets, and then you go back again, and then they sign you up and give you 3 months worth, and then you have to go every 3 months to get tested for all potential STIs. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can purchase PrEP from abroad. It's perfectly legal to do so. Obviously, check out the website iwantprepnow.co.uk and prepster.info. They have all the sites and recommendations of where to buy it from reputable companies from outside the UK. As I say, it is perfectly legal to do. Now, you may have heard that when it was first announced that the NHS had to trial it, because the NHS did try to contest it and say that they shouldn't have to fund this. There was a lot of negative press about, it's a lifestyle drug. But my opinion is very much different to that. But we're not here to talk about that. So have a look at the research. Go on to iwantprepnow.co.uk, prepster.info. Check out the Terence Higgins Trust for more information about the PrEP Impact Trial. It's prepimpacttrial.org.uk. Check them out. There's a wealth of information out there. There's tons of stuff on YouTube. It's definitely worth a look at. But obviously, you've got to do what's best for you. It doesn't prevent the transmission of any other STIs. It's advisable to still use protection and condoms. But it's your choice. There's lots of information out there for you to make a decision, and it is there to be used as a tool in the prevention of HIV and AIDS.
This is KCC Live.
Hi, welcome back. You're listening to Amy on Out There on KCC Live. So thank you so much there to Richie for giving us some really decent information there on PrEP and PEP. Moving on, I want to look a little bit more about relationships. When I talk about relationships to a lot of my friends and stuff, one of the things that comes up is that, oh, have you found Mr. Right yet? Or Mrs. Right? That seems to be a big thing, that you've got to find a person that likes everything you like and does everything you do and is perfect and is wonderful. And, I think in a realistic world, personally, you can call me jaded if you like, I don't mind. But I don't think there's such thing as Mr. Perfect or Mrs. Perfect. It's a bit of a myth. It can be that you find someone that you have enough in common that you can be interested in, but I really think it's healthy to also have separate interests. So, don't get me wrong, my relationship is far from perfect, and I don't believe anyone has the perfect relationship. But I'd like to think that me and my partner have enough in common, that we're close, we're interested, we enjoy each other's company, we have interesting things to say. But we also have enough not in common that we can go and do our own thing when we want our own space. So I do this radio show, for example. I enjoy doing it. You know, I like painting my nails. He has no interest in that. I like looking after myself in that sense, you know. He likes doing techie things and, you know, playing around with Amazon Alexas and things like that, which I have no interest in, apart from going, oh, that's cool, dear, when it turns the lights on and off and stuff like that. So I don't think there's any such thing as that perfect relationship. It's about finding someone that has enough in common, but also a bit not in common, because otherwise it's going to get boring and samey, isn't it? But there's another side to that as well. There's the Mr. or Mrs. Wrong. There's the unhealthy relationship. So I found a list, it was shared on my Facebook, and it's about Mr. Wrong, but I think it applies for both sort of genders. It's all genders. It's not just a man. So it says the wrong person will shout, they will sulk, they will smash things, they'll glare, they'll call you names. Name calling is one of them things that really ticks me off. Like, I don't mind, like, you know, oh, you're being a butthead, you know, in jest, whatever. But, you know, when people call, like, their partner the B word, I hate it when I hear people calling them the B words. I'm like, oh, no. That's my personal grind of gears. And they make you feel ugly and useless. That's no good. No one deserves to feel ugly and useless, not at all. We should build each other up. We shouldn't be knocking them down. They cut you off from your friends. They stop you working. They never admit they're wrong. Don't get me wrong, right? I am one of the most stubborn people. I will admit this. And I tell you what, my partner will listen to this and he will just kind of nod along and do the yes dear thing because he's smart. But I don't often admit it, but I am stubborn. And I think there's a difference between being stubborn and admitting you're wrong. I think the being stubborn, you eventually admit you're wrong a little bit down the line when you've calmed down and you come back and you go, I'm sorry, I was being stubborn. If they never admit they're wrong, not everyone's right 100% of the time. So that's definitely an indication that it's not a good relationship. Turns the children against you if there's children and uses children to control you. Never does their share of the housework. This is a big one. Obviously, everything in a household, if it was perfect, it'd be 50-50 or 50... Well, yeah, 25, 25, 25, 25. If you've got kids, that'd be nice. But my kids don't do the dishes or the washing, unfortunately. But that's it's an important thing. If yous are existing in the same space, everyone should be putting into it as much as they can. If one person is working and they're working a lot of hours and the other isn't working as many hours, then sure, maybe they should take a little bit more of the housework on. But it should never be 100% one person's responsibility. They never look after the children. This is one that I've had come up before where I have had relationships in the past that weren't great. And I found that if I asked the other person to mind the kids, it'd be like, would you mind? And it's like, I'm asking them to babysit their own children. And that's not a healthy thing either. Like, again, my partner now puts up with me and I'm like, I'm going out to this place I've been asked out, is that okay? And I'll keep double checking because I'm not used to someone going, yeah, it's fine, they're my kids, I'll look after them. It's not a problem. That's how it should be. It should be that they just look after the kids when needed, as long as it's not unreasonable and you're not going, I'm going out 6 nights this week and I might come back on the 7th, but I'm not really sure. But that's how it should be. We should be sharing things like that. Expect sex on demand. Again, your body is your own. Even if you're in a relationship, if you don't want to have sex, you don't have to have sex. End of. No ifs, no buts, no coconuts. Controls the money. Another way that people can control other people. It's not healthy at all. Threatens or wheedles with you to get their own way. Again, not good. Seduces your friends /sister /anyone. Expects you to be responsible for their well-being as well. That's another one that can be really bad. Emotional abuse, when someone is in that position where they just want to please, they want to make that person happy, and they'll use that against them. It's not good. And blames you for things like drinks and drugs, etc. All those things point to a not healthy relationship. Domestic violence is something as well that's a big issue around the world and in the UK. So we're going to talk a little bit about that next. Stay tuned, more after this.
The Station with Attitude, KCC Live.
Hi, welcome back. You're listening to Amy on Out There on KCC Live. So our subject for this week's show is sex and relationships. We're talking about domestic violence now, which is a really serious subject, and it's that serious. The government website gov.uk has actually got a page on it. So this is what they say is the definition of domestic violence and abuse. The cross-government definition of domestic violence and abuse is any incident or pattern of incidents of controlling, coercive, threatening behaviour, violence or abuse between those aged 16 or over who are or have been intimate partners or family members, regardless of gender or sexuality. The abuse can encompass, but is not limited to, psychological, physical, sexual, financial and emotional. It lists controlling behaviour. Controlling behaviour is a range of acts designed to make a person subordinate and or dependent by isolating them from sources of support, exploiting their resources and capabilities for personal gain, depriving them of the means needed for independence, resistance and escape, and regulating their everyday behaviour. Then it goes on to coercive behaviour. Coercive behaviour is an act or a pattern of acts of assault, threat, humiliation and intimidation or any other abuse that is used to harm, punish or frighten the victim. This is not a legal definition. Definition of domestic violence and abuse. Guide for local areas, this one. To help local areas consider how the extension of the definition of domestic violence and abuse may impact their services, the Home Office, in partnership with Against Violence and Abuse, AVA, have produced a guide for local areas, so you can actually check out what the guide is for your local area. Forced marriage also comes under domestic abuse, and there's guidelines you can read up on that. And there's various sorts of steps that you can escalate with. There's a charity for mainly women called refuge.org.uk, and that one talks about the stats, and it says one woman in 4 experiences domestic violence in her lifetime. 2 women are killed each week by a current or former partner in England and Wales, which is a very, very scary statistic, if I do say so myself. That's the average, taken over 10 years as well, so it's not even like someone just made that up. In the year ending March 2016, 1.2 million women were reporting experiences of domestic abuse in England and Wales. And it says, whilst this number is shocking, we also know it's grossly underestimated. The cap on the number of violent crimes published, set at 5 per victim, means that even if a woman has experienced 100 incidents of domestic violence, only 5 will make it into the official data. We know that were the cap to be removed, the number of incidents of domestic violence would increase by about 70%. That's unreal. That amount is really, really high. So refuge.org also has a guide for recognising abuse. So it's got a list of bullet points, and it says, is your partner excessively jealous and possessive? Is he charming 1 minute and abusive the next? Does he have sudden changes of mood like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? Is he stopping you from seeing your family and friends? Do you feel isolated? Is he constantly criticising you and putting you down in public? Does he embarrass you, often in front of family and friends, so that you are seen in a bad light? Does your partner play mind games and make you unsure of your own judgment? Does he tell you that you're useless and couldn't cope without him? Does he control your money? Does he tell you what to wear, who to see, where to go, what to think? Does he pressure you to have sex when you don't want to? Are you starting to walk on eggshells to avoid making him angry? Does he monitor your movements or check up on you via your email, Facebook, Twitter, or by looking at your text messages? Does he use anger and intimidation to frighten you and make you comply with his demands? Has your partner ever threatened you or intimidated you by using violent language or smashing up the furniture? Are you forced to alter your behaviour because you're frightened of your partner's reaction? Are you blamed for their behaviour? For example, did they say you were asking for it or deserved the abuse? It's very similar to the list that I read out earlier, but these are things that are definitely warning signs in a relationship. And it's not just females either. It falls for males too. I don't believe that it's just a female issue, not at all. And I also think that men are more the victim of the sort of psychological and emotional abuse rather than physical. I think it manifests in different ways, but it's definitely there, and you should seek help. There are lots of places that will help you talk about it. Refuge is just one. Domestic violence can cover emotional abuse, sexual abuse, financial abuse, so many different things as well. It's not just hitting your partner. People think of violence and they go, oh, it must be smacking them around or anything like that, but it's not. It's really not. And the psychological abuse can be even worse in some cases than physical, because it messes with your brain and it leaves lasting damage. You know, wounds may heal, but things in your head take an awful lot longer. If you believe that you're experiencing any form of domestic abuse, there are people you can talk to. So you can go to your doctor, health visitor or midwife if you see those people. There's a helpline for women. It's 0808 2000 247, and that's a 24-hour national domestic violence helpline, and that's run in partnership with Women's Refuge Men. There's a number that you can call as well. It's the Men's Advice Line, and it's a free number. It's 0808 801 0327, and that's Monday to Friday between 9 to 5. Or you can call Mankind as well, which is another one, and they are on 01823 334 244. If it's an emergency, obviously, and you know you're really worrying that someone's going to do something really bad, call 999. You know, if it's that sort of emergency. There's various charities and stuff out there as well. If you Google, if you look, then there's a lot of information out there of who you can turn to. There's a organisation called Gallup, and they provide support to lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender people experiencing domestic violence. And there's also a forced marriage unit as well. Definitely have a Google if you need those numbers, and I will also put a link up to them on the Out There Facebook page for anybody that may actually want to go back and double check them. Next up, I want to take a look and talk about LGBT plus relationships. So keep listening, there's more after this.
This is KCC Live.
Hi, welcome back. You're listening to Amy on Out There on KCC Live. So we're talking about relationships, and I want to just give a little nod to the LGBT plus people and movements and relationships. So I found a little timeline. It's really a short, condensed one. It was on a BBC website article, and it says like about 50 years of legislation. So in 1967, sex between two men over 21 and in private is decriminalised. Before that, anybody that was committing what was considered gay sex was arrested. And it was put on your personal file that, you know, you've been arrested for this. And it's actually only recently, last year, I think it was, that Scotland scrubbed people's records of these sorts of historic crimes, if you like, what they consider to be crimes, which is unreal. You can't even imagine it nowadays that you were persecuted for just loving somebody. Unreal. 1980, decriminalisation in Scotland. 82 in Northern Ireland. In 94, the age of consent for two male partners is lowered to 18. This is also, I think it seems that lesbian relationships have always been just hush-hush, but not like overtly sort of opposed, whereas male relationships definitely were. People definitely like them a lot less. In 2000, the ban on gay and bisexual people serving in the armed forces is lifted. The age of consent is equalised for same and opposite sex partners at 16. Again, you know, people see it as such a big thing, but teens, younger kids, I say kids, it shouldn't, younger people experiment as well. It shouldn't be that it's 18 for one thing and 16 for another, not at all. Not when it's just gender. You know, it's not a big deal nowadays. It's really not. 2002, same-sex couples are given equal rights when it comes to adoption. We now have a lot of families that are being brought up with same-sex couples and stuff, and it's nice to see. And I know a lot of people think that, won't somebody please think of the children? And I must admit, I have 2 children, and I've never seen them bothered at all about these things. Like, they just accept it. They just go, oh, okay. You're like, oh, this person has 2 mums. Oh, okay. 2 dads. Oh, okay. That's it. You know, simple. Kids don't care. They're not bothered. As long as that person's loved, that child's loved and cared for, that's what's important. It doesn't matter the gender of the people that are bringing them up. In 2003, gross indecency is removed as an offence. 2004, a law allowing civil partnerships has passed. Now, when the civil partnerships were passed, everyone was celebrating, of course, but they were still pushing for gay marriage. And I remember being asked about it and being like, well, why are they still pushing? I was like, well, it's still not the same. It's still not equal rights, and that's what we deserve. There are, in fact, also people who are in gay and lesbian relationships who are religious. And you know what, right? Whether or not you belong to a religion that will give gay marriage and you don't believe in it, that's for God to judge them, isn't it? If that's what they believe in, that's for them to be judged, not you. In 2007, discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation is banned. Great. Good. So it should be. 2010, gender reassignment is added as a protected characteristic in equality legislation. And 2014, gay marriage becomes legal in England, Wales and Scotland. So we saw our first sort of gay marriages, if you like, in 2014, which actually, I felt it was longer than that, but it's not, and that's not a long time ago at all. You know, also there was a survey done by, I think it was NatSen, where they asked people basically like whether or not they approved of same-sex relationships, and it was a really steep curve up, and it's good to see. It's good to see that people are now more accepting of those sorts of things. Criminalisation of gay people continues into this century. Like, can you imagine that? In 1967, it was only partly decriminalised. So those keen to criminalise any public displays of consensual homosexual activity still had tools to do so through the offence of gross indecency, which has a broad interpretation. Again, I'm looking at the Ministry of Justice stats for this, and you know what? It goes from 1969 to like 1988. And it's kind of declines, but then it starts building from about 1985 right the way up and peaks at 89 and then goes back down again. And I'm not really sure why that is. I'm wondering if it... Oh, yeah. It was moral panic over the AIDS epidemic. So people were really sort of against gay people because AIDS. But we all know now that that wasn't necessarily true. It's something that we keep coming up against. Until there's equal rights, people are still going to campaign, and that's how it should be. The article also says that young people are more likely to identify as gay, lesbian or bisexual, and I honestly think that's because we're more open about it and it's less taboo. It's not normal, but it is at the same time, depending on what circles you're in. I had somebody I knew recently, and they came out to me. And they seemed a little off. They were a little worried. They didn't know that much about me. We'd not met long. And they just turned around and went to me, actually, my partner's female. She was female. And I was like, oh, okay. And she looked at me and did a bit of a double take. I'm guessing she must be used to people then asking questions and things. So I was just like, okay, good for you. Very good. I was like, where'd you meet? You know, I don't really care what gender your partner is, but the fact that she still felt the need, and she was younger than me as well, to explain to me that her partner was female. You don't get that with hetero people, do you? You don't get, you don't come out, do you? Oh, mum, I've got to tell you something, I'm straight, or you don't get, oh, I've got to tell you that my partner's male. I'm female, but my partner's male. You don't feel the need that you have to explain that, and that's how it should be for gay people as well. We shouldn't have it where we're sort of feeling that need to explain ourselves. It should just be a normal thing, and I do hope that when my children are older that it won't be such a huge thing. It will just be normal, and that's how it should be. I mean, there's still countries out there now where it's still criminal to be gay, would you believe? And there's a big amount of countries. Russia is included in that as well, because they seem to sort of to and fro about it. There's also places that carry the death penalty, so Iran, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Sudan, Somalia, Nigeria, parts of Iraq and Syria, that are held by so-called Islamic State. There's a lot of places that still will punish you, even giving you the death sentence for being gay, and that is wrong. You should be able to be in a relationship with whoever you want, as long as it's safe, consensual, you feel loved, you feel supported and cared for. That is what is important. The gender of the people really isn't. Anyway, next up we're going to have a little chat about media and relationships, so stay tuned because there is just a little bit more after this.
This is KCC Live.
Hi, welcome back. You're listening to Amy on Out There. We're coming to the end of the show now, but before we do, we just wanted to talk a little bit about relationships in the media, especially social media. There's an awful lot of pressure nowadays for your relationship to be perfect. There's pressure for people to be perfect, and we've covered this before in our body confidence show, which you should definitely check out on our podcasts. You can go on kcclive.com and you'll find Out There on there with the podcast on, or you can check it out on YouTube. Again, search for KCC Live and then you'll find Out There body positivity. Yeah, there is so much pressure to be perfect nowadays, and you see like the hashtag relationship goals or hashtag boy done good, you know, with the Michael Kors bags and stuff. That always seems to be up Pandora like every Valentine's Day, hashtag boy done good. I must admit I'm a bit of a cynic and it makes me laugh, but that's just me. Maybe I'm a bit bitter, who knows. But I think definitely with social media there is that pressure there. You've got to be perfect, or people feel like they've got to be perfect. You've got to be going on all these lovely romantic dates, and they've got to be spending loads of time with each other and doing all these things together, and it's not how real life works, is it? What we portray out there to the world is not how our life is. I know, even looking on my own social media, I post pictures where I feel fabulous. I don't post pictures where I'm being a slob in my PJs on my couch eating Easter eggs because we just had Easter, and, you know, chilling out, taking it easy, binge watching something on Netflix. We don't do that, do we? So we paint this picture of this perfect relationship that we've got, and it's because we miss out the bits that, you know, you had a fight because you didn't do the dishes, or your partner was doing your head in because they couldn't decide what they wanted for tea, or they left the washing in the washing machine and you wanted to kill them. These are all real things that happen in my life, honestly. I do not have the perfect relationship, but I have a happy relationship. I love my relationship, but what we portray to the outside world, like even my own social media, looks like I have a wonderful relationship. It's perfect. We go out on lovely days out with the children. We take nice pictures and I get lovely treats and flowers and things like that, when in reality it's not always like that. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not bashing my partner, not at all, but I think what we show to the outside world, it's just not always how it works. The same with our own personal social medias and what we show to sort of our bodies and stuff, and it's wrong. What we're showing to each other is not real. We shouldn't be aiming for something that is that way and putting the pressure on relationships. There's a huge impact on it, and it also can help or hinder trust as well. Social media, definitely. Like, you get people who look through their partner's social media and they want to know who everyone is and what they've been doing and why have you got them on there and stuff like that. And again, it's not healthy. It's a controlling thing. It's a way to control people. Anyway, if you've got any thoughts on any of these subjects, you can actually get in touch with me on Facebook. Come and have a chat. If you search for Out There on Facebook, we'll be one of the first ones that come up because we're awesome. And the picture's like, it's a rainbow picture of me at the moment, but it's likely to change to something else rainbow themed. And you can have a little chat with us and talk to us about it and tell us your thoughts and feelings. You can also email me if you want it to be a little bit more anonymous. That's amy@kcclive.com. Or you can check out the KCC Live Facebook, or you can go on kcclive.com's internet site, show me age there, that there internet. You can check that out as well. Any of the numbers that I've said tonight, the phone numbers and the help for various different things and details as well for STI clinics and the Brook and stuff like that, will be up on the Facebook, so you can check them out. Thanks for listening. Speak to you next week. Bye.
The Station with Attitude. KCC Live.